want to talk about this. 62% of C-suite leaders say people data does not connect to business performance. Joey's HR Lounge, and oddly enough, I'm in an airport lounge at the Denver International Airport. So you may hear some background chatter. My Macs are working the way that they're supposed to. Everything will be good. And we're going to have a fun episode. This week, it's cool that I'm here at the Denver International Airport, Delta Airlines lounge, because I'm talking about one of the tools that they use, which is SAP SuccessFactors. And so if you're at Delta, you might want to pay attention to this episode. If you're already on SAP SuccessFactors, you want to pay attention to this episode. If you're evaluating SAP SuccessFactors, you'll want to pay attention to this episode because recently SAP had their Sapphire in Orlando and Madrid. But I want to talk about what was announced in Orlando here in the US, and specifically Dan Beck's keynote. So he had some interesting things that you need to know about how the tool is being innovated and what's actually shipped already by the time you're watching or viewing this or listening to this. So, the good news is with respect to the updates, if you're already on the platform, you're a CHRO, you're interested in that CHRO seat and you want to learn how to leverage the innovation that came out of Sapphire. The good news is you're already using the tool. So you can go back and watch the recording and then tinker in your own system and figure things out. But if you're not, you can still get value out of this podcast that we're doing. The other thing too is, as I mentioned, Dan announced some of the announcements and what's shipped, and they're already here. June 2026, they're available. So what did ship? The keynote was actually in 3 key phases. First phase was automate. Second was reimagine. And then the third was all about elevating. So with respect to automation, which I think was a very important thing you need to pay attention to, there were about 13 Joule assistants that were released. So, if you're on SAP, you know that Joule is the AI engine that essentially powers how you interact with your product and get the data or the actions done on your product. Well, now there's 13 new agents, and that's pretty exciting. They covered the full gamut of HR operations. So everything from payroll, recruiting, onboarding, HR service, so much more. And the thing about agents, if you're not quite ready if you haven't turned them on, if you've heard about them but aren't quite sure what they do, agentic AI in HR is incredibly helpful because it removes the burden, it removes the heavy lifting that you typically have when going through tasks. So if you give a query to an agent, you're not just getting data back, you're actually getting things done. So with Joule assistants, Dan mentioned that they're running the whole workflow. However you're looking to build and roll out agents within your product, you can do that. And I think you'd be pretty wise too, especially with the hybrid workforce that we're in. The next thing that was mentioned and was shipped was all about reimagining your workforce. There's a new workforce planning tool that's going to connect to core ERP, the field glass, contingent labor, and SuccessFactors. So it's going to help you to plan your people and your agents together. Maybe your seasonal workers or your contingent labor force. But now you've got to realize we are in an environment where agents show up for work too. They clock in, they take task orders, they complete things, they utilize your data, they analyze, they execute. So now your workforce is truly, we're living in the hybrid era, absolutely living in the hybrid era where, you need to understand not only what you can do in this hybrid era, but you have to prepare your workforce for the future and, not even just the future, but the reality of today. And that's the third thing that shipped, which is, one of the agents that was called out by name, the, workforce upskilling assistant. And what that's meant to do is, it's there to push microlearning into the flow of work. So imagine you're executing a task. Maybe you're running payroll. Someone in your division is running payroll. And Joule, the workforce upskilling assistant, says like, hey, do you maybe you didn't know that you could do this a bit more efficiently, a bit more effectively, or you could rely on me to handle this portion of the workflow. That's a pretty cool thing to have in your back pocket. where you're not waiting on organized training schedules. You're not trying to coordinate or inventory necessarily skills and readiness, but it's already in the platform. So it gives you an opportunity to independently level up your team without having to make it a group effort, which is, to me, super important. And why is that important? Because HR professionals are busy. And if you can find ways to make them busy on the right things and not busy on burnout, super important that you can have an assistant that helps. There was a stat that Dan mentioned, and I want to talk about this. 62% of C-suite leaders say people data does not connect to business performance. 62%. That's more than half. That's almost three quarters. Well, why is that an issue? Because honestly, as an HR leader, if you're not able to convey your value to your leadership team, if you're not able to convey the fruit of your efforts and tie them to what's happening on the P&L, what's happening at shareholder meetings, what's happening for the growth and relevancy of the business. It's kind of like if you haven't earned a seat at the table, you might be on the menu. And with the way that hybrid workforce works, I think that this tool is going to give you it is an agent, and it is an assistant, but it's going to give you an ally in helping you prove your value not only to the C-suite but to the organization, and give you not only talking points but measurable impact that you are able to show in the hallways and in the boardrooms. So automate, reimagine, and evaluate. Now, I want to take this portion of the podcast to talk about how this new announcement ties into our framework that we have here at Jumpstart HR, where we research the hybrid workforce and we research how agents are showing up in modern workforce and what you should be doing about it. When you introduce assistants into your workflow, every agent and every assistant you switch on, it changes the kind of workforce that you run. Now, what do I mean by that? When you go from driving a Camry to a Ferrari, it's a whole different driving experience. And so when you turn on these assistants, it's a whole different workforce experience and expectation that you should have, not only of your team, but also that output that you're able to get collectively from your human workforce and your agentic workforce. Now, to help you understand all of this and to help just set the expectation for the reality that we live in now, we have a framework called the 5 workforces. And that's 5 ways that organizations organize, absorb, utilize, govern AI agents. And in understanding that, you've got to know that in any organization, the end goal is not just to use AI. That's not the point. I mean, you can have AI, but are you pointing it in the right direction? Is it doing the right things? Is it helping you align your workforce effectively? Saying you want to use AI is now no different than saying, yeah, we want to use Excel, or we want to use Tableau. You've got to point it to the right use cases that work for your organization. For all organizations, there's 5 types. There's the free-for-all. That's where everybody's in their own tools, ungoverned. There's the augmented, where every worker has a sanctioned helper. There's delegators, where people direct small teams of agents. There's an orchestrated workforce, where people and agents are on one governed roster. And there's autonomous, where the company largely runs itself. Now, if you were to give those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you're tuning into this podcast, you're probably somewhere, especially if you already have SAP SuccessFactors, you're probably somewhere between 2 and 4. Not quite the free for all, because by the very nature of you having SuccessFactors, you have tools that are in your wheelhouse that everybody can use, and that's governed by your workforce policies. So you're either augmented, a delegator, or orchestrated. So what you want to know is, as you think about, like, where do we stand in this framework, and how are we going to make the most of the tools that we use? I want you to think about these things. Number 1, inventory every AI assistant and agent that you're already running across your HR stack, whether that's in SuccessFactors or not. because you can't govern what you can't see. And it's important to govern the tools, not only from a risk compliance standpoint, but also from the standpoint of ensuring that you know how to make the most of your tools. You know how to apply a tool to a person so that a person gets better output, or applying an agent to a workflow so that you have greater stability and predictability and productivity from that output. You also want to match one pain to one assistant. So think about your manual workflows, think about your, whether it's payroll or service tickets, and map it to a Joule assistant. You want to have a one-for-one list of what problem are we facing, and then what solution can a Joule assistant provide for us? And then after you've rolled it out in your, well, honestly, before you roll it out, because we're still pre-implementation, you want to name who the adoption owner is. Who's the person in your organization that's watching whether people use the tool or not? That might be you as a leader of the HR department, but you may delegate that. So just make sure that someone is checking for whether these tools are being used effectively. And then you want to, going back to that 62% stat, you want to connect one people data point to one business metric that your board or your C-suite is asking about. Making it real practical here, just making sure that you're able to tie your effort to the business outcomes. And then the last thing, you want to pick your target archetype from the 5 that we mentioned. You know, free for all, augmented, delegator, orchestrated, autonomous. I'll throw a link in the show notes for you to take a look at what that full list looks like and how they're different, and honestly what the risk. But pick your target archetype. If it's the one you're in now and you're comfortable there, be the best archetype that you could be. If you see an archetype that's more aspirational, set goals to moving in that direction. Now, maybe, you know, some fun prompts that you might want to try with your assistants. You might say, show me this cycle's payroll exceptions and the most likely cause of each. Or you might want to try group our open HR service tickets by theme and draft replies for the top 3. Another one might be build a 5-minute upskilling path for managers on reviewing AI generated work. So, you know, major takeaways. If you're using SAP SuccessFactors, Joule's already there, and the Joule assistants are ready for you to add to your workforce. I think that with that being said, the headline here is about automation. It's about how can you make your workforce more productive and more reliably productive with some of the automations that are at your disposal now. You know, I would say now's a good time to inventory your agents. What's in your tools? How should they work? Who should be owning them? And what outcome should you be expecting from them? And then, you know, stay tuned. This is an evolving story, not only with SuccessFactors, but also with the agentic workforce that we're experiencing. And I want you to stay tuned to the research that we're putting out, because that's what we're focused on. That's what we're covering. So hope you enjoyed this episode. Share it with your team. And check the show notes for additional resources that can help you make the most of your experience with SAP SuccessFactors if you're already a client. All right, till next time. See ya.